endless sky they reign supreme. Voices echoing like whispers in a dream. Night and west ride a storm with words they weave. Bruce joins the tale if his grind grants reprieve. Princes of the universe, their thrones are their lights, spinning tales of wonder from the depths of their eyes. Through the shadows of chaos, their voices ignite a beacon of wisdom in the dead of night. From galaxies afar to the mundane grind, no topics too obscure for their curious minds. The laughter cuts the dark like a blade of steel. In the realm of the podcast, the truths are revealed. Princes of the universe, their thrones are their lights, spinning tales of wonder from the depths of their eyes. Through the shadows of chaos, their voices ignite a beacon of wisdom in the dead of night. From galaxies afar to the mundane grind, no topics too obscure for the curious minds. The laughter cuts the dark like a blade of steel. In the realm of the podcast, the truths are revealed. Princes of the universe, their thrones are their lights, spinning tales of wonder from the depths of their eyes. Through the shadows of chaos, their voices ignite a beacon of wisdom in the dead of night. If Bruce's chains of labor let him break away, he joins the battle of ideas they slay. The trifecta stands strong like a mighty brigade. Their words as legends that will never fade. Princes of the universe, their thrones are their lights, spinning tales of wonder from the depths of their eyes. Through the shadows of chaos, their voices ignite a beacon of wisdom in the dead of night.
There can be only one podcast, and may it be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt.
And I'm Wes.
Hey, welcome back.
Here we are.
Here we are.
In the squared circle.
Dark Side of the Ring time. Squared circle. This is one that the missus sat down and watched the whole thing with me. Because she is a big Van Vader fan.
It's time.
That's what she said. So she said, "What do you watch?" I said, "Dark Side of the Ring." She went, "Is that about Vader?" I went, "Well, this episode is." She went, "Oh." And she just sat down and just watched the whole thing. I said, Are you a Vader fan?" She went, "I loved him." I was like, "Really?"
Yeah, when you think of wrestlers that draw a woman's attention, Kerry Von Erich, guys like that, big Van Vader, not who you'd have on your bingo card.
Not one I would think would be high on her list of other. She had some other ones that she enjoyed too growing up, but you think of Shawn Michaels,
sure,
as a lady's favorite. But even The Rock in some cases, John Cena in some cases. But Big Van Vader is one of your favorites. And I said, "Why?" She went, "Oh, Ashley and I that's her sister, always just loved it when he came out. We just thought he was so awesome." Really? Now, whenever I saw him, because I saw him back in the late 90s with you when we were watching it, and it wasn't, he came out, you knew who he was. I don't think he ever did anything that big.
Yeah, unfortunately, his run in WWF was pretty. They kind of
Past
bought
tense.
damaged goods.
Yeah, he was just coming in there doing one match. He had a name, and he
I-
was
he
helping
wa-
the other guy get over.
I think he got hurt physically in WCW and rushed back too soon, and I think his confidence was pretty shot from the fight with Mr. Wonderful, and then I think the whole situation with getting in with Sean and Sean saying he can't keep up with me, it kind of doomed him.
so that was kind of it.
yeah.
They have of course, they tell his whole story. This one, of course, none of these have happy endings. Well, most of them don't. Doesn't have a happy ending. I don't know anything about him prior to those late 90s. Were you watching anything back
Well,
then?
yeah, I mean, I would watch him during that dark time when I didn't really watch a lot of wrestling, but I would catch parts of WCW, and you would see him on there, and that was his powerhouse time, definitely before those 4 years before WWF. He was a beast.
He
Big,
was.
agile, very physical, very intimidating.
He came from who?
All Japan.
All Japan, but the hard hitting, the real hit, the stiff, as they say.
Yep.
That's what he grew up. So that's what he kept, and he was
Trained in Minnesota.
he was known for being super stiff with wrestlers. A lot of wrestlers didn't want to wrestle.
Hurt
with
a
him.
lot of guys.
Hurt a lot of guys.
He got hurt in the ring. Stan Hansen about knocked his eye out of his head.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Broke his
They
orbital bone.
talked about that. Popped his eye back in and went back to wrestling. That's kind of wow. Yeah.
It was a different time.
But it was a different time. But they loved him in Japan.
Yep.
A lot of big names in Japan. Did you ever rent? I know these VHS tapes from Japan. People used
I was
to watch
never
every
really a
once in
tape
while.
trader,
Yeah,
but
I knew someone who had them, but I wasn't interested in watching anything. I said, "Why would I
it's
wanna
hard to
this?
watch wrestling from Japan with the Japanese overtone of it.
They didn't have the
you don't have
flashiness. It
well,
was
you just don't have English guys calling it, so
Right.
it's kind of lost in translation.
Yeah,
Because crowd reactions are so different, so you can't watch it for the same crowd sounds because Japanese crowds react totally different than United States crowds did.
Right.
But I thought the helmet was super cool. I mean,
Oh
that
yeah,
was
no,
very
the outfit was pretty impressive.
that was for something not to be derived out of Vince's Circus Olay of wrestling. That was pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so anything else to say about Big Van Vader?
Sad ending.
Sad ending to him. Yeah.
I think his career, like I said, the fight with Paul Orndorff was just kind of sad, but at the same point, it's Vader was kind of a bully, so that's kind of what happened. Is he met somebody who was cockstrong in a different way, and I do think that there's something to him probably being surprised that Paul was going to hit him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he probably did not know how to react. Like if it was a real...
Well, suppose he got really
one-on-one.
hurt. He got really upset if you got mad at him, which was what was said in the show.
Yeah. I think that is some truth to that, but Paul was a legit tough guy. I mean, he was known to not back down, and I think Vader at that time was already kind of shook from the whole Hogan thing coming in, and Hogan not wanting a job to him and kicking out of the Vader bomb and all that typical brother crap that Hogan did with everybody. I think he was just he was so damaged goods.
Right.
And, Vince at some points can take damaged goods and he'd love to repair them, but he kind of brought Vader in as Vader and put him with Cornette, but Cornette is as great as he was. The WWF Cornette was so kind of watered down.
Yeah.
He was like safe for TV versus dangerous for TV.
Playing the regular manager character of
Yeah.
the era. Yes, I agree. Not as controversial or as flavorful as the man
not
we
not
know
as
today.
topical and condescending and like
Yeah.
the real Jim Cornette.
Got the real Jim Cornette. Yes, wasn't near that one.
So yeah,
All right.
I think the Vader thing was more of a just kind of sad that he beat his body apart and kind of died a broken man
Yeah.
for that, and definitely didn't pick his battles probably as wise as he should have.
Did not. Safe to say.
He may have been a beast in the ring, but he was not a beast with being a politician in the business.
No, he was not. Good episode though. This was a good episode.
Yeah, for sure.
The next one that they had was Tony Atlas Too Much Too Soon, and this whole episode seemed to be a rehash of a previous episode or something I've seen before.
It's the book you read.
It's the book.
It's the book.
The
Six-Pack Challenge.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Because so much of that book is
everything
Tony
was
Atlas.
already in there. And
You've heard these stories.
I felt like, wasn't there someone else Tony Atlas hung out with, and they did one on him too?
Well, they did. He was on the one when Brody got killed. When Bruiser Brody got killed
Yeah,
in
but
Puerto
wasn't
Rico.
Bruiser? I thought there was another one, but anyway, I don't remember. Maybe you're right. Maybe it was Bruiser Brody, but I felt like this was all.
He's been on a few different ones.
Yeah, because I've
He's a
seen.
good, I mean, I think Tony tells good stories because he really,
does.
He doesn't really care. He's financially set as a man his age can be with his kind of situation.
He does what he can. He knows his wrestling. He does his wrestling. He has a great story of being homeless, living on a bench, meeting his wife who took care of him. Got him off the street, and now he takes care of her. Very sweet,
Right.
story there. And now he takes care of her and everything. So seems like a nice guy, and lived the high life, lived the great times. Should have saved his money back then. Laughs about it, doesn't regret, no bitterness.
Yeah.
Just is what it is. He runs around, makes his life. So, it was interesting to see, but I felt like there was nothing new I got out of that. And you could be right. It could be because I'd read the book.
I think it's just that Six-Pack Challenge. So much of his story, he's so good. He is the star of that book. You may have not read that book.
Yeah.
It's
really
incredible.
good. Yeah.
It's a great wrestling book. It's very fact, behind the scenes, different point of view, not the typical crap you're sold.
And that's what Brad, I can't pronounce his last name right now. He's been on the YouTube channel. I've interviewed him before.
Okay.
And just a really nice guy who, of course, was friends with the Iron Sheik back in the day, happened to be writing this. It almost went to release as the Iron Sheik died. And he said, whoa, stop the presses. I got to write an extra chapter.
Right.
Because now I got to talk about the Sheik a little bit, which wasn't his plan at first, but that kind of bookends the whole thing, which makes it all beautiful. And just listening to him talk, to be a guy who just didn't know much about, besides the regular fan wrestling thing, didn't know much about the inside of the business.
It's a good, fresh perspective.
It is, and he always wants to give different perspective. That's his idea. Is like, what hasn't been told? What story, what angle hasn't been used when talking to these guys? And, of course, he goes down that magical card of that night, the night that Sheik won the belt, just to set up to. And I thought that was great. Going down the play card, something unique we haven't seen. Let's see how many wrestlers I can get off that card to just talk about their lives.
And what you say about Tony, and he has done so much stuff. He did a thing in MTV in like the late 90s. He was on with like China and Triple H, and so he has always found a way to kind of be in these little wrestling behind the scenes things because he's a character.
He's kept himself busy. Hasn't retired to the shadows, but just and happy the way his life isn't the best. He's got to make his money. But he's making do with what he can, and he's happy for it, and he's thankful for the life he had. So that's really nice to see a guy go down the dark path. It could have been really bad. I remember in this show they did go to the bench, and he hadn't been to that park in years, but showed the bench where he used to sleep on, and that's kind of surreal to think that, wow, this guy, this big wrestler that,
Yeah.
was honestly one of the most famous people back in his,
He was
heyday.
famous across the country.
Famous
in
across the
different parts
country
of-
is now, just a few years later, homeless, sleeping on a bench, wanting to die.
Yeah.
Wanting to die, like sleeping in the bitter cold and everything, just waiting to die.
So that is a good story. We talk about Dark
Yeah.
Side of the Ring being a sad story. This is kind of a good ending.
I didn't mind this one because it gave a little hope, and I didn't mind it. But I did feel like I didn't learn as much. And I feel like I've seen some of this somewhere else. But again, I could be mistaken. The next one is the original superstar Billy Graham. Do you know anything? I know we could bring Heath on here to talk about Billy Graham, and I thought about inviting him on because I know how much you love to hear Heath spin a tale. Does he have a Billy Graham tale?
I don't care. So I love Billy Graham. I read his book.
Oh, you did?
When WWF put that out.
I did
actually
not
bought
know
the
this.
DVD years ago.
Look at you.
I thought Billy Graham was incredible. Definitely way ahead of his time, like they say.
Yes.
He was everything that they said, but he was as full of as much garbage as he was juice. He
Right.
was just such a con man.
Oh, yeah.
And his life, they showcase how much of a con man he was. And
Yes, they
sad
did.
situation. Like he's one of those guys that whatever good he would do, if he made $3,000 wrestling Bruno one night, he was going to somehow lose that money within the next 72 hours.
Yeah.
Doing something foolish.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's just the way he was.
Spending the money left and right, limos, planes, the Ric Flair.
Well,
of his day.
I wouldn't even say it's Ric Flair, with Rick being like the party guy and buying drinks and having fun. Billy Graham just made a lot of bad decisions. He was right for the sake of saying, gosh, I can't believe they're going to take the belt off of me. But instead of him going somewhere else and doing something, he thinks the best idea is to kill his own gimmick and do this karate gimmick.
That was crazy.
I mean,
shave his head.
yeah, I mean,
like just totally step away from his entire
No
identity.
wrestler would think that's a good idea.
It
You
was-
would
it was-
take all the parts of what made you successful and turn them upside down.
But also, you see, gimmicks are for people who just can't get over, and they're trying to do something to get over with the crowd. He already had the charisma. He already had the moves.
Right.
He already had the talent. But his karate was it was like Steven Seagal, bad. The blah,
Well,
blah, blah,
it
blah.
was
And
silly.
It was silly, yeah. For a wrestler.
He lost all his credibility with that.
Yeah.
And I know that obviously he was impaired from a lot of different things, and extreme depression from having more success than he never thought he would have, to losing it, and Lord knows nobody likes dealing with that. Whatever success you have, but it's a pretty sad tale, and I definitely think that he does not get the credit for everything he's done.
So what are a few things? A few things that Billy Graham. I mean, obviously,
I think the bullet point promo, like where you just go out and you're like, Jesse did Billy Graham very well. Jesse did Billy Graham better than Hogan. Hogan took that and just made it this cartoon, but Jesse really did the Billy Graham thing, and it was extremely good at it. Which was why, Jesse against Hogan was going to be such a big deal at one point. It just never worked out. But the whole look, the blonde, the mustache and the goatee and all of that.
it was the Hulk Hogan before Hogan.
And then Scott Steiner took that, and all of you guys, that look of a guy that didn't look like a guy that just fought in the bar. It was like, oh, like this is like
It's
larger than life.
It's something different where most guys were just the big Hulk, the Gorilla Monsoon type people.
Correct.
They were just the
Black
big bruisers.
tights, black boots, wear a singlet.
Same old,
This
just
guy's
a man's
wearing
man.
tie-dyed green tights with red boots and a bandana. Just like,
He's got more
wow.
flair. He's just someone you haven't seen. He looks like a rock star with the long
yeah,
blonde
I mean,
hair.
he looks so New York. He just looks so New York of that time, like what, this like counterculture way of life. Not to say like the New York Dolls, the group, but just that
No, I know what you
look, the presentation was so much more important than when he got in the ring. That didn't matter, but the presentation of him getting in the ring and then him talking, that's what made wrestling. So I definitely think, any great talker took something from Billy Graham. But I think it's a sad, sad story.
Oh no, it for sure is a sad story.
I mean, his kids are, that's
what
tragic.
That's what I was gonna say about the kids.
Terrible.
That's what kind of hurts the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just
When you have a bad parent and you realize all I can do is love them because I want to kind of find out what that feels like, is a sad story.
it's rough.
Godly. Jeez, it's terrible.
I mean, I don't know many other people who would say that about their family.
Your box.
They just want to be loved.
Your box of gimmicks.
I'm telling you.
When you pull that out, it's like when Jake used to pull the snake out.
After
you DDT somebody, you pull that out.
I pull this,
everybody.
and folks who don't know, there's an inside joke that's been going on for about a year. But you gave me this inside joke.
Yes, I did.
You gave me this.
Gladly.
So this is why it stays right here, and it gets used every once in a while. So one day, 20 years from now,
I knew it was used during Heath's.
you knew. You told me you knew it was being
paint
used.
drying episode.
Yeah. If you hear a pause, you hear a then you know that the inside joke is being played on the podcast, and so
Yeah, Heath's incredible reactions.
But that's funny when you said, I know exactly when you did it. And I was like, okay, there you go. But what possessed you to get the autobiography?
I think one thing is the working out. I love working out, and he was the first wrestler that really was a body guy, as a term is what they would use.
Oh, really? That surprises me. I thought they all lifted weights around.
Well, I mean, they would, but Billy Graham was like, I'm going to look like
so he training regiment.
builder.
Got it. Okay.
And I found that, I think that that's unique to be the first of anything. And I know there's going to be there's other guys that lifted weights. I mean, Stu Hart lifted weights. There's a lot.
I got you, but he was one of them.
He was the first, like, someone said, I can do something because of the way you look.
My physique, not just my strength, but the physique, the way I look.
Right.
Everyone else can bench a car,
Well, not even,
but I want to have that physique of a
and
superhero.
even that, but just he was a star, not because of so much like his incredible work in the ring. It was just that presentation. I think that that's interesting to take a business like wrestling, which is, it's a sleight of hand magic show, and be a trendsetter to that.
Yeah. So did you learn anything from his?
Did I learn
he talk
anything
about his workout
I
regimen?
can't say I learned anything.
Okay.
I think it's
well, you know how Triple H's autobiography was. It read like a workout regimen. I think he even gave you
I mean,
this.
I already knew about 4 streps and things like
Okay.
that. I didn't buy Billy Graham's book for protein and carbohydrate balance. But I think it's interesting. And the one thing is, I always want to see when guys talk about drug abuse. And there's plenty of things on YouTube like Joe Rogan and Kurt Angle's where he's talking about how much Percocets he does. Guys never really talk about their steroid routine. It's almost like that's what we cannot talk about.
Yeah.
They won't say, I was doing 3 C's a test and I was taking 3 Dianabols a day. I was stacking it with Winstrol. I was using 3 IUs of growth hormone. Like, they're not going and telling you, and I don't know why that is. But I was kind of like, I want to see how open he is. And obviously, he's not going to. Unfortunately, it's a WWF production. They're not going to give you everything. But yeah, I think it's a good episode.
All right. So last episode we'll talk about here is the Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert.
Huge from where I grew up.
Yeah. You followed this story probably more than I did.
Yeah, Eddie
Because
Gilbert was.
he was old ECW.
Well, he kind of helped
He
start
started,
ECW,
yeah.
but he was huge in Mid South when I was a kid. He was one of those guys that was a mouthpiece guy, just a heat magnet. He had an interesting start working for the WWF and was in that terrible car accident. I'd heard that story before about with Don Morocco, so it was interesting to hear it again now. But yeah, he just had a terrible life as far as hardships, but was such a creative guy, but was self-destructive. You know, like so many
Right.
guys that like, I've got all these great ideas, but my work ethic, am I going to show up tomorrow night? Good luck. And that's just, you know,
Right.
it's an unfortunate thing, but that's a lot of the older you get. It's kind of like, hey, we're going to do a podcast at 8 o'clock. Are you going to be there at 8 o'clock? Are you going to be there at 8:15? Are you going to be there? You know, it's hard to depend on people. And Eddie Gilbert was one of those guys that had a ton of great ideas, but he was his own worst enemy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So that Jim Cornette had a little story about this.
Yep.
That I think I'd heard before in some interview or something. I think I'd heard Jim Cornette talk about it, but where he had thought that Eddie told the story. He thought Jim Cornette, obviously, he thought everyone had betrayed him and everything
Because he couldn't face reality that he was his worst enemy. It's
Yeah.
always somebody else's fault when it's your fault.
And everywhere he went, it just, you know, he was his own worst enemy and tripped himself
did
up,
it
but
to-
always blamed everyone. Now, they didn't show any of these interviews from him blaming
Mm-hmm.
people, but I'm assuming, did you see any of those?
Well,
besides the shoot he did a long time ago, back when shoots were
yeah,
rare.
that was
and-
one of the very first ones. No, but I mean, there's enough stories out there with him working with people. He had a big falling out with Flair. He had a big falling out with Todd Gordon, who started ECW.
They mentioned that a little bit in
Yeah.
the show, yeah.
So, you know, he just didn't hit. He didn't have his credibility. Just could not. He couldn't keep up with his creativity.
And going back to the shoot we mentioned, he did this way before this was a thing.
Yeah, it was like a few years before people. This
Before
was probably
they
like
finally let you, yeah.
93 or 92. I think.
Yeah, right before the curtains started being pulling back a little bit.
Yeah.
People were still safeguarding that kayfabe
Yep.
thing, and so to do this was just atrocious. What a traitor! What a thing! Did you get a tape of this? Were you into this? Did you?
That was
when this started
right
coming out?
before I
Right
got
before- okay.
into it. But I do think that was a huge part of me enjoying wrestling again, was that side of saying this is how it is.
Well, I remember when we were in it. Well, when I was watching it with you in the late '90s. If someone did a shoot on a little podcast, or usually it was a fan site,
Yeah.
Doing an interview, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
You wanted to read. Hey, did you read about the latest shoot
Yeah.
he was shooting on?
Yeah.
Oh, what? Because you didn't get to see it. Now it's all the time.
Yeah.
But it was kind of still a special thing
Well,
in
and
the
I
late
think that's
90s.
part of it. With he was always kind of ahead of everybody else with ideas.
Yeah,
The
with
problem
ideas, he was definitely there.
is can you follow through with your ideas? It's always good to get a project started, but can you finish it?
So
and
his thing was he couldn't finish.
Could not finish.
All right, so great ideas, couldn't finish. I never saw any of his matches. I'd always known of him because I think they did a history of ECW a long time ago that I probably watched. Or no. Did you give me the book? Was there a book? No, it was WCW.
No, I gave you an ECW
You gave me ECW.
book.
So it was in the ECW book that I read a bunch of this
Okay.
then. That's where I remembered a lot of it. 'Cause I remembered his name and
He's
everything.
quite
how
the
they talked
ladies'
about
man.
it.
You can't hold that against him.
Well, was he truly hot stuff?
To pull what he pulled,
Do you think that would be Heath's nickname if he was in the wrestling world?
his would
Hot
be
stuff,
hot
Heath.
stuff. Because
Hot tea.
his
Hot
speaking
tea,
is
Heath
like
Fudge.
an Imperial Walker. Plodding.
Okay, so you didn't see any of his matches either. I mean, you didn't see much.
I mean, I've seen him.
You saw a
I
few
mean,
of them
I
in the
think
past
it was,
tense, but
I
not
don't-
during the moment.
No, I saw him. Yeah, I saw him wrestling.
Oh no, you said that.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, he was a heat magnet. That's what. Other than being, I guess, yeah, he was a good-looking guy, but he was hot stuff because he got the crowd so hot. To me,
Yeah.
that's more of the hot stuff moniker.
The Heat, yeah. Overall, I felt that was a fine episode. I'd like to see it. you
Yeah,
know.
really, I thought it was good.
I thought it was good that they addressed it. I enjoyed. I just enjoy seeing the past videos and stuff that they had on there, and it was nice. And then of course here Jim Cornette talk about. I mean, he knows about everything in wrestling, but this one he had a more personal connection to the events, and could give a little bit more insight.
Jim
on
Cornette
that.
lends credibility like he's kind of like if you've worked somewhere or you have a friend of your dad's who has known him his whole life. I'll say it like this. I watched the Dale Earnhardt documentary that's out. And when Dale Earnhardt's best friend talks, it's so good. It like makes the documentary because that's the real story. This is a guy that is like his buddy, like that knows your secrets and stuff. So when Jim Cornette talks about his fellow brethren in the wrestling business, his credibility is as high as anybody else's. So when he has these emotional outpours of friends he's lost, it's very
real. Yeah.
very real. It draws you in. It makes you kind of feel for Jim Cornette. And
And he got choked up on this one, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because he said he would have been my age
yeah.
right now. Yeah.
And then in the drop of a hat, he can also fill you with four-letter words because of how ignorant you are and how little credibility you've brought into the business that he cares so much about. So
Very good. Always good. You heard Mr. Cornette on these. All right, folks. Well, tell us what you thought of these 4 episodes here, episodes 3 through 6, and we'll be back next time with the final 4 episodes on Princes of the Universe.